The stars had always called to humanity. For thousands of years, people looked up at the night sky and wondered what secrets hid among those distant lights. In the year 2147, they finally had their answer. And it was not what they expected. Captain Yuna stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel Horizon, watching the endless darkness of space through the main window. She was a tall woman with sharp eyes and short black hair. 20 years in the Space Force had taught her to stay calm in any situation. But today, even she felt her heart beat faster. The Horizon had traveled farther than any human ship before. They were near the Kepler system, almost 40 light-years from Earth. Their mission was simple: explore, document, and return. No one expected them to find anything alive out here. Lieutenant Taiwo checked his console for the 10th time. He was the tactical officer, a former Special Forces soldier who still moved like he was ready for combat at any moment. His hands were steady, but his voice carried concern when he spoke. "Captain, I am picking up multiple contacts on long-range sensors. They are not asteroids. They are moving in formation." Yuna walked to his station and looked at the screen. 12 objects, arranged in a perfect triangle, approaching fast. Too fast to be natural. "Dr. Jisoo," Yuna called out, "please come to the bridge." The science officer arrived within minutes. Jisoo was younger than the others, with glasses that she pushed up her nose whenever she was thinking hard. She studied the sensor data, and her face went pale. "These are ships," she said quietly. "Artificial structures. Captain, we are looking at alien spacecraft." The bridge went silent. Every crew member stopped what they were doing. This was the moment humanity had dreamed about for centuries. First contact with extraterrestrial life. But the way those ships moved, fast and aggressive, made Yuna's stomach tight with worry. "Open a channel," she ordered. "All frequencies. Send a greeting message in all Earth languages." The communications officer worked quickly. They sent mathematical sequences, images of Earth, recordings of music and speech. Everything humanity had prepared for this moment over the decades. Then they waited. The response came in perfect English. "Unknown vessel. You have entered space claimed by the Galactic Council. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in immediate destruction." Taiwu's hand moved toward the weapons console, but Yuna raised her hand to stop him. They were one ship against 12. Fighting was not an option. "This is Captain Yuna of the Earth vessel Horizon," she replied calmly. "We come in peace. We did not know this space was claimed. We mean no disrespect." There was a long pause. Then a different voice spoke, deeper and more commanding. "You will receive our ambassador. Prepare your docking bay. You have 10 minutes." The alien shuttle that arrived was unlike anything humans had built. It was smooth and silver, with no visible engines or windows. When it opened, 3 beings walked out. They were tall, almost 7 feet, with blue-gray skin and 4 arms each. Their faces had no expressions that humans could read. The leader introduced himself as Ambassador Vethra. He looked around the horizon with what might have been disgust. "Primitive," he said. "Your species has only just learned to crawl between stars." "How amusing." Yuna kept her face neutral. "We are eager to learn about the galaxy and its inhabitants. Perhaps we can establish peaceful relations between Earth and the Council." Vethra made a sound that might have been laughter. "Peaceful relations? You misunderstand, human. The Galactic Council does not make friends with new species. The Council rules the Orion Arm. We have done so for 15,000 of your years. Every species discovered must take its proper place." "And what place is that?" Yuna asked, though she feared she already knew the answer. "Service," Vethra said simply. "New species must serve existing council members for 500 cycles. You work in our mines, crew our transport ships, clean our cities. After that time, if you prove worthy, you may apply for junior membership. This is the law. This is how it has always been. Dr. Jisoo stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. And if a species refuses? Vethra turned his 4 eyes toward her. No species refuses. Those who tried no longer exist. The Council has cleansed 17 worlds of uncooperative life forms. Your Earth would make 18 if you are foolish enough to resist. The bridge was completely silent. Every crew member understood what was being said. This was not first contact. This was an ultimatum. Serve or die. Captain Yuna thought about Earth. She thought about her family and soul, about the children playing in parks, about the billions of people who had no idea what was happening out here. She thought about everything humanity had built, everything they had dreamed. And then she thought about kneeling to these arrogant creatures for 500 years. No, she said. Vethra seemed confused. No? You reject the mercy of the Council? Earth will not serve anyone, Yuna replied, her voice steady and strong. We are a free people. We have fought each other for thousands of years, but we have also learned. We know what it means to be enslaved. We rejected that long ago. We will not accept it now, no matter who offers it. The ambassador's 4 arms twitched. You are one small ship. Your planet is helpless. You cannot possibly fight the Council. Yuna smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Maybe not. But we will try. And I promise you, we will make it cost you more than you ever expected. Vethra stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned to his guards and spoke in a language the translators could not understand. They returned to their shuttle without another word. 10 seconds after the shuttle cleared the docking bay, the first shots hit the horizon. The ship shook violently. Taiwu was already at his console, returning fire, though their weapons seemed to do little against the alien shields. Sparks flew across the bridge. Crew members were thrown from their seats. Emergency jump! Yuna shouted. Get us out of here. The engine officer's hands flew across his controls. The ship shuddered as the faster-than-light drive charged. Another hit rocked them. Warning alarms screamed. Hull breach on Deck 7. We are losing atmosphere. Seal it and jump now. For 1 terrible second, nothing happened. Then space folded around them and the horizon vanished into the void. They emerged 4 days later, damaged and limping, at the edge of Earth's solar system. But they were alive. And they had brought something important with them. Recordings of everything that had happened. Within hours of landing, the footage spread across every network on Earth. People watched in horror as Vethra demanded their surrender. They watched Captain Yuna refuse. They watched the attack on the horizon. And for the first time in human history, every nation on Earth agreed on something. They would not kneel. Emergency meetings began in every capital. Old enemies sat at the same table. Armies that had faced each other for generations now planned together. Resources that had been hoarded were shared freely. The Galactic Council had made a terrible mistake. They thought humans would break easily. They did not understand that threatening humanity was the one thing guaranteed to unite them. Captain Yuna stood before the newly formed Earth Council 3 weeks later. Her arm was still in a sling from the attack. She looked at the leaders of every nation and spoke simply. They are coming. They will bring more ships next time. They will try to make an example of us. And we have maybe months to prepare for a fight against an enemy that has conquered the galaxy. She paused and looked at each face in the room. But we are human. We have survived ice ages, plagues, and our own stupidity. We do not give up. We do not surrender. And we absolutely do not kneel. The room erupted in applause. Outside, across the world, people gathered in streets and squares. They held signs and shouted at the sky. The message was simple. Earth was ready to fight. 3 months had passed since Captain Yuna brought her warning home. 3 months of sleepless nights, impossible deadlines, and miracles born from desperation. Humanity had worked faster than ever before in its history. But would it be enough? Admiral Dongyun stood in the command center of the newly built orbital station Unity. He was an older man with gray hair and a face marked by decades of military service. Through the window behind him, he could see Earth spinning slowly in the darkness. Beautiful, fragile, everything he had sworn to protect. "Report," he said quietly. His aide pulled up the display. "We have 42 combat-ready vessels, sir. Another 15 are still being fitted with weapons. The shield technology we reverse-engineered from the Horizon sensor data is working, but we do not know how well it will hold against their weapons." 42 ships. Against an empire that had conquered the galaxy. Donghyun closed his eyes for a moment and took a deep breath. "And our ground defenses?" Director Soman is ready to give her report. The screen changed to show a woman in her 40s with tired eyes but a determined expression. Director Soman ran Earth's Emergency Weapons Research Division. She had not slept more than 4 hours a night since the crisis began. "Admiral," she said, "Project Hammer is operational. We have modified the asteroid defense system to work offensively. We can redirect objects up to 2 kilometers in diameter toward any point in the solar system. It is not elegant, but if they come in a standard formation, we can hit them with rocks before they reach Earth." Donghyun nodded. "What about the sensor network?" A young man's face appeared next to Summons. Engineer Ji-won was only 26 years old, but he had already proven himself a genius. He pushed his messy hair back and spoke quickly. "The satellite grid is fully connected, sir. We have turned every satellite in orbit into part of a distributed sensor network. We cannot hide from them, but we will see them coming from the edge of the system. Every ship, every missile, every shuttle. We will know." "Good work," Donghyun said. "All of you." He was about to give further orders when an alarm cut through the room. Every screen flashed red. Officers ran to their stations. "Contact!" Someone shouted. Multiple contacts at the edge of the system. 200+ ships. Donghyun felt his stomach drop, but his voice remained calm. "Show me." The main display changed to show the outer solar system. Past Neptune, past the dwarf planets, a massive fleet was emerging from faster-than-light travel. The ships were arranged in a perfect formation, a wall of metal and fire that stretched across millions of kilometers. 200 warships, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. "We are receiving a transmission, sir." "Put it through." The screen filled with the face of Ambassador Vethra. He looked exactly as he had 3 months ago, cold and superior. "Primitive humans," he said. "The Council has considered your rejection of our offer. It was decided that you require a demonstration of our power. Behind me is the enforcement fleet. We have conquered 100 worlds. Your small planet will not be a challenge." Donghyun stepped forward so the camera could see his face clearly. "This is Admiral Donghyun of the United Earth Defense Force. You are entering sovereign human space. Turn back now or face the consequences." Vethra made that strange laughing sound again. "Consequences? You have 40 ships against 200. Your technology is centuries behind ours. What consequences can you possibly threaten? Come and find out." The ambassador's expression changed slightly. Perhaps it was surprise. Perhaps it was annoyance. "You have 72 of your hours. Surrender your planet, disarm your fleet, and prepare for processing. If you do not, we will burn your world until nothing remains but ash." The choice is yours. The transmission ended. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Dongyun turned to face his officers. They were scared. He could see it in their eyes. But they were also angry. Good. Anger was useful. You heard him, the Admiral said. 72 hours. Let us show them what humanity can do in 72 hours. The next 3 days were chaos. Across Earth, evacuation sirens wailed. Underground shelters that had been built during old wars were open for the first time in generations. Families said goodbye and descended into the darkness, hoping they would see sunlight again. In orbit, every shipyard worked around the clock. Welders and engineers pushed themselves beyond exhaustion. Ships that needed another month of work were declared ready because there was no more time. Director Selman personally supervised the final calibrations of Project Hammer. The asteroid redirection system had never been tested at full power. If it failed, if the calculations were even slightly wrong, those rocks would miss their targets completely. Or worse, hit Earth's own ships. Run the numbers again, she ordered her team. And again. And again. We get one chance at this. Engineer Jiwan worked on something else entirely. He had spent weeks studying the sensor data from the Horizon's brief battle. The alien ships had shields that blocked energy weapons easily. But there was a pattern to how those shields activated. A tiny delay, less than a second, when they switched from one angle to another. If we hit them fast enough from multiple directions at once, he explained to Admiral Dongyun, their shields cannot keep up. They have to choose which attack to block. And while they are choosing, they are vulnerable. The Admiral studied the young engineer's face. Can you make this work? I can try, sir. That is all any of us can do. On Earth's surface, something unexpected was happening. People were not panicking. They were not hiding in their homes crying. Instead, they were gathering. In every city, in every town, people came together. They donated supplies, volunteered for service, helped their neighbors reach the shelters. Old arguments were forgotten. Old hatreds set aside. A man who had spent his life distrusting his neighbor now helped that neighbor carry supplies underground. A woman who had never spoken to her coworkers now organized them into an efficient evacuation team. Humanity had spent centuries fighting each other. They knew how to hate, but they also knew how to come together when it truly mattered. And nothing had ever mattered more than this. Captain Yuna watched the preparations from the bridge of a new ship, the Vanguard. Her injuries had healed, and she had been given command of the 1st Assault Squadron. 42 ships against 200. The math was impossible. But she remembered something her grandmother had told her as a child. Yuna, the old woman had said, the impossible is just the possible that no one has tried yet. Lieutenant Taiwu stood beside her as they watched the enemy fleet through long-range sensors. They are not moving, he observed. They are just sitting there, waiting for our surrender. They are confident, Yuna replied. They've never lost. They cannot imagine losing now. That is their weakness. Yes, and we will use it. 60 hours into the countdown, Admiral Dongyun gathered all ship commanders for a final briefing. His face appeared on screens across the fleet. I will not lie to you, he said. Many of us will not survive tomorrow. The enemy is stronger, faster, and more experienced. By every logical measure, we should lose. He paused and looked directly into the camera. But we are not fighting by their rules. We are fighting by ours. They expect us to surrender or die. They do not expect us to hurt them. They do not expect us to make them bleed. And that is exactly what we are going to do. His voice rose with passion. Every ship you destroy is one less ship threatening our families. Every minute you survive is another minute for Earth to prepare. Do not think about victory. Think about cost. Make them pay for every kilometer they advance. Make them remember that humanity does not go quietly. Across the fleet, men and women straightened in their seats. Fear was still there, but so was something else. Pride, determination, a refusal to accept fate. 20 hours until contact, Dong Yun continued. Rest if you can. Say what you need to say to whoever you need to say it to, and then report to your stations ready for the fight of your lives. He ended the transmission. 12 hours later, Engineer Jiwan reported that his modifications were complete. The new targeting systems would allow coordinated attacks from multiple vectors. It was untested, improvised, and probably crazy. It was also their best hope. 6 hours later, Director Soman confirmed that Project Hammer was ready. 17 asteroids, carefully chosen and precisely aimed, were waiting for a command. 2 hours later, the enemy fleet began to move. Admiral Dong Yun stood on the bridge of Unity Station and watched the wall of enemy ships advance. Behind him, Earth glowed blue and white in the darkness. 7 billion people were counting on him. All ships, he said quietly into the com. This is Admiral Dong Yun. They want our surrender. Let us give them our answer. He took a deep breath. All units, engage. The Council fleet advanced in perfect formation. 200 warships, arranged in ranks like soldiers on parade. They had used this formation for thousands of years. It showed their power. It demonstrated their discipline. It crushed resistance before the first shot was fired. Commander Vethra stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Divine Will. He watched the tiny human fleet ahead with something close to boredom. 40 ships against 200. This was not a battle. This was an execution. Signal all vessels, he ordered. Advance at 3/4 speed. Let them see us coming. Let them understand how hopeless their situation is. His second officer hesitated. Commander, should we not deploy screening units? Standard protocol for engagement? Vethra made the dismissive gesture of his species. These primitives cannot hurt us. Why waste time with caution? I want this finished quickly. The Council expects a clean victory. The fleet continued forward without defensive formations, without scouts, without any of the precautions that had kept them alive for 15,000 years. That arrogance would cost them everything. Admiral Dong Yun watched the enemy approach from Unity Station. He saw their tight formation, their confident advance, their complete lack of defensive preparation. He allowed himself a small smile. Director Soman, he said calmly, you may begin. Across the solar system, the asteroids moved. Project Hammer activated with silent precision. 17 rocks, each one between 500 meters and 2 kilometers across, began adjusting their orbits. Plasma engines that had been hidden inside them for months fired in careful sequence. The asteroids did not move fast. They did not need to. They had been positioned weeks ago, waiting for exactly this moment. The first asteroid struck the rear of the Council formation. There was no explosion. Just physics. 2 kilometers of iron and stone traveling at 40 kilometers per second. It tore through the back lines of the fleet like a bullet through paper. 3 warships were destroyed instantly, torn apart by the impact. Another 2 collided with debris and lost power. Before the Council could react, the second asteroid hit. Then the third. The fourth. Vethra's bridge erupted in chaos. Alarms screamed. Officers shouted conflicting reports. The perfect formation shattered as ships scattered to avoid the deadly rain of stone. What is happening? The commander roared. Projectile attacks. His tactical officer answered. Large objects moving at high velocity. They were hidden in the asteroid field. Destroy them. We cannot, Commander. Our weapons are designed for ship combat, not asteroid interception. The targets are too large. Vethra watched in disbelief as another of his ships vanished in a cloud of debris. The primitive humans had turned the solar system itself into a weapon. It was crude. It was brutal. It was completely unexpected, and it was working as the Council fleet scrambled to reorganize. Pilot Unji launched her fighter squadron from the carrier Horizon. She was a small woman with lightning reflexes and absolutely no fear. Her squadron, the Black Eagles, had trained together for only 6 weeks. It was not enough time. Nothing would have been enough time, but they flew anyway. "All Eagles, listen up," she said through the comm. "They are confused. Their formation is broken. We are going to make it worse. Hit and run attacks only. Do not stay in one place. Do not be a hero. Hurt them and move." 40 fighters streaked toward the disorganized Council fleet. They were fast and small, much harder to hit than the larger warships. They darted between the massive enemy vessels, striking at weak points that Engineer G1 had identified from sensor data. The Council ships tried to target them, but their weapons were designed for destroying other capital ships. The tiny human fighters were like flies buzzing around giants. Annoying, hard to swat, and surprisingly dangerous. Yunji led her wingman toward a damaged cruiser. Its shields were flickering where an asteroid impact had overloaded its generators. "Eagles 3 and 4, with me. Target the shield gap." 3 fighters fired simultaneously. Their missiles were tiny compared to Council weapons, but they all hit the same point at the same moment. The already weakened hull buckled. Secondary explosions rippled along the cruiser's length. It drifted, dead in space. "First kill to the Eagles," someone shouted over the comm, but Yunji had no time to celebrate. A Council destroyer had locked onto her fighter. Warning alarms filled her cockpit as targeting lasers painted her ship. She rolled hard, diving toward the destroyer's own hull. The enemy could not fire without hitting themselves. It was crazy. It was desperate. And it worked. Eagles use their size against them. They cannot shoot through their own ships. The fighters danced between the massive Council vessels, using them as shields against each other. It was not a tactic anyone had ever taught them. It was pure improvisation, born in the chaos of battle. And it was costing the Council more ships every minute. Back in the inner solar system, Commander Haniel prepared for the enemy that would get through. The Luna perimeter was Earth's last line of defense. 20 defense stations orbited the moon, armed with the most powerful weapons humanity could build. Behind them, Earth-weighted Hani Ul was a woman in her 50s who had spent her entire life in space. She had helped build the first stations around Mars. She had seen humanity take its first steps beyond Earth. Now she might see those steps. "End. Status report," she ordered. 17. Stations fully operational. 3 are having power fluctuations, but they will fight. All crews are at battle stations. She nodded. "And the civilians?" "Evacuated. The stations are empty, except for combat personnel. Everyone understands the situation." Haniel looked at the tactical display. The Council fleet was regrouping, moving past the asteroid ambush zone. They had lost maybe 40 ships to the rocks and the fighters. A significant blow, but not enough. 160 enemy vessels still advanced toward Earth. "They will reach us in 2 hours," her tactical officer reported. "Our main fleet is moving to intercept, but they are outnumbered 4-1, Haniel finished. "I know. We all know. It does not matter. We hold this line, whatever it costs." The main engagement began near Mars orbit. Admiral Dong-hyun personally commanded from the bridge of the battleship Defiance. Around him, 42 human warships faced the advancing Council fleet. It was suicide by any reasonable calculation. But there was nothing reasonable about this war. All ships, Dongyun broadcast. Execute pattern chaos. Engineer Ji-Wan's targeting system activated across the fleet. Instead of focusing fire on single targets, every human ship suddenly attacked different enemies from different angles. The Council's shield systems, designed to block concentrated fire, could not adapt fast enough. Holes appeared in enemy shields. Human weapons found those holes. Council ships that had never taken damage suddenly found themselves burning. What are they doing? Vethra demanded as another of his vessels exploded. This is no tactic I have ever seen. Their attacks are randomized, Commander. We cannot predict where the next strike will come from. Then adapt. Change frequencies. Deploy countermeasures. We are trying, but their pattern keeps shifting. Every time we adjust, they adjust faster. Vethra stared at the display in disbelief. His fleet was taking losses. Real losses. Against primitives. Against a species that had been among the stars for barely a century. It was impossible, and yet it was happening. The battle raged for hours. Human ships were destroyed, one by one, their crews fighting to the last moment. But for every human vessel lost, they took Council ships with them. The exchange was not equal. The humans were still losing, but it was far closer than anyone had expected. Sergeant Minwoo commanded the ground defense forces on Mars Colony. If the enemy reached Earth, Mars would be next. He had 3,000 soldiers under his command, armed with whatever weapons they could gather. Hold positions, he told his troops. Watch the skies. If any of them land here, we make them regret it. His soldiers were scared. Most of them had never seen combat. But they did not run. They watched the distant flashes of battle in the darkness above and waited as the 6th hour of fighting passed. Something changed. The Council fleet stopped advancing. Vethra looked at the casualty reports and felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. 80 ships destroyed. Another 30 damaged. Nearly half his fleet lost to a species that was supposed to be helpless. Commander, his second officer said quietly, our reserves are insufficient to guarantee victory. If we continue, we risk total defeat. Retreat? Vethra could barely speak the word. The Council has never retreated. The Council has never faced an enemy like this. Vethra looked at the display. The human fleet was shattered. Only 15 ships remained combat capable. But those 15 ships were still fighting, still refusing to surrender, still causing damage. What kind of species fights like this? He wondered. What kind of madness makes them prefer death to submission? He did not understand. He could not understand. But he recognized that continuing this battle would cost him everything. All ships, he commanded, his voice bitter. Withdraw to the outer system. Regroup and await reinforcements. The Council fleet retreated down on the bridge of the Defiance. Admiral Dong-Yun watched them go. Around him, exhausted officers sobbed with relief. The cost had been terrible. 60% of their fleet destroyed. Thousands dead, but they had survived. And so had Earth. Admiral, his communications officer reported. News travels fast in space. Within days of the Battle of Seoul, every corner of the galaxy knew what had happened. A primitive species, barely capable of interstellar travel, had fought the Council to a standstill. The mighty enforcement fleet had retreated. Ships that had conquered 100 worlds had been destroyed by rocks and tiny fighters. The Council tried to control the story. They called it a temporary setback. They blamed Commander Vethra for poor tactics. They promised swift and total retaliation. But the truth spread faster than their lies. On a dozen worlds, in 100 systems, beings who had served the Council for generations looked up at the stars and whispered a new word: hope. Ambassador Yaren had never expected to represent her entire species. 6 months ago, she had been a mid-level diplomat handling trade negotiations between Earth's nations. Now she stood on the deck of a neutral space station called the Crossroads, preparing to meet aliens who had lived in chains for centuries. She was a small woman with kind eyes and an iron will. The council underestimated her because of her soft voice and polite manner. That was their mistake. Captain Yayuk commanded the ship that had brought her here, the rebuilt cruiser Defiance. He was a serious man who rarely smiled, but his crew would follow him anywhere. Behind him stood Intelligence Officer Nari, whose job was to listen, learn, and understand the galaxy they had suddenly joined. "Remember," Nari said quietly as they approached the meeting room, "the Relians have served the Council for 2,000 years. They have never known freedom. Be patient with them." Yaren nodded. "I understand. Fear does not disappear overnight." The Relian delegation waited in a small chamber. They were thin creatures with gray skin and large eyes that seemed permanently worried. Their leader, an elder named Telos, wrung his 4 hands together nervously as the humans entered. "You came," he said, as if he could not believe it. We thought perhaps you would ignore us, or that the Council would intercept our message." Yaren smiled warmly. "We would never ignore a call for help. Please, tell us about your people." Telos looked at his companions. They nodded encouragement. He took a deep breath and began. "The Relians were a proud species once. We built great cities, created beautiful art, explored our own star system. Then the Council came. They gave us the same choice they gave you, serve or die. Our ancestors chose to serve. They believed 500 cycles would pass quickly. They believed freedom would come eventually." His voice grew bitter. "That was 2,000 cycles ago. Every time we petition for membership, the Council finds a reason to deny it. Our service period is extended. New requirements are invented. And so we remain slaves, generation after generation, with no end in sight." Nari leaned forward. "And now? Why reach out to us?" "Because you did what we never could," Telos said. "You fought. You bled them. You showed the galaxy that the Council is not invincible. For the first time in 2 millennia, my people believe change is possible." Ambassador Yaren reached across the table and gently touched the Relian's hand. He flinched at first. Such contact with a master species would be forbidden, then slowly relaxed. "We are not your masters," Yaren said softly. "We are your friends. And friends help each other." The alliance began that day. Over the following weeks, more species made contact. The Volanti, insect-like beings who had secretly maintained their own technology despite Council rules. The Mothrani, peaceful farmers who provided food for Council worlds and knew every supply route in the quadrant. The Skellig, warriors whose pride had been broken centuries ago but never quite extinguished. Each group had something to offer. Knowledge of Council weaknesses, maps of secret passages, lists of sympathizers in the Council hierarchy. And in return, they asked for only one thing: hope. "They see us as liberators," Nari reported to Captain Yayuk one evening. "It is both an opportunity and a burden." The captain nodded. "We came out here looking for allies. We found something more. We found a galaxy waiting to be freed. Can we deliver on that promise? We are one species. The Council rules thousands of worlds." Yayuk was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "My grandmother used to tell me that every fire starts with a single spark. We are that spark. What happens next depends on whether the fuel is ready to burn." Ambassador Yaren traveled to 12 neutral stations over the following months. She met with dozens of species, each with their own grievances against the Council. She listened to their stories, learned their cultures, and slowly built a network of trust. Not everyone was welcoming. Some species feared council retaliation too much to openly support humanity. Others believed the humans were fools who would soon be destroyed. A few tried to capture Yaren to trade her to the council for favors. Those attempts failed. Captain Yayuk's crew proved more than capable of protecting their ambassador. During one such rescue, Nari discovered something that changed everything. They had boarded a council transport that had been secretly carrying prisoners to a mining world. Among the captives were members of species that had supposedly been extinct for centuries. The council does not just conquer, Nari reported grimly. When a species resists too effectively, they do not destroy them. They disappear them. Hidden prison worlds scattered across the galaxy. Millions of beings held in secret for generations, their very existence erased from history. Yaren felt cold. They told Earth they had cleansed 17 worlds. They lied. The populations are still alive, still suffering. And the Council has built its power partly on the fear of that threat. But the threat is based on a deception. This information spread quickly through the network of allied species. The Council had claimed the power to destroy entire civilizations. Now the galaxy knew the truth. The Council was afraid. They feared resistance so much that they could not even admit it existed. Captain Yayuk began leading covert missions to locate and rescue prisoners from these hidden worlds. Each mission was dangerous. Each success freed beings who had been forgotten by the galaxy. And each freed prisoner became a living reminder that the Council could be defied. On the water world of Thesan, his team rescued 300 Moragi, a species that had been declared extinct for 800 years. The Moragi remembered their history. They remembered why they had been imprisoned. They had developed a technology that could disable Council shields. Their scientists had died in captivity, but their knowledge had been passed down through generations of oral tradition. Engineer Jiwan spent 2 months working with Moragi elders, reconstructing their lost technology. The result was the gravity pulse emitter, a weapon that could collapse shields across an entire fleet. "It will work," he told Admiral Dong Yun via encrypted communication. "One pulse can disable every shield in a 10-kilometer radius. They will be vulnerable for 30 seconds before their systems reboot." 30 seconds, the Admiral mused. "Not long. Long enough," Jiwan replied. "If we time it right." Meanwhile, the Council was not idle. Intelligence Officer Nari intercepted encrypted communications that painted a terrifying picture. The Council was assembling a grand fleet 800 warships drawn from every member species. It would be the largest military force ever gathered in the Orion Arm. Their target was Earth. "They know about our alliances," Nari reported. "They know we are building something. They are coming to crush us before we become a real threat." Ambassador Yaren received this news during a meeting with Telos and representatives from 11 other species. The Relian elder looked stricken. 800 ships, he whispered. "Even with everything you have built, you cannot fight that many." Yaren was quiet for a moment. Then she stood and addressed the room. "You are right. Humanity alone cannot defeat the Grand Fleet. But humanity is no longer alone." She looked at each representative in turn. "For 2,000 years, you have served. For 2,000 years, you have feared. For 2,000 years, you have waited for someone to stand up and say enough. Well, we are saying it. Not just for ourselves, but for every species that has suffered under the Council's rule." Her voice grew stronger. "The Council believes we are still small and isolated. They believe you will stay obedient while they crush us. They believe fear will keep you in line. Let us prove them wrong. When the Grand Fleet comes for Earth, let them find not one defiant species, but many. Let them learn that the galaxy has changed while they were not watching." Telos looked at his companions. Slowly, one by one, they nodded. "The Relians will send ships," he said. "Not many, but what we have." Other voices joined in. The Volanti would contribute their hidden fleet. The Skellig would send their warriors. Even the peaceful Mothrani would provide supply vessels. By the time the meeting ended, Ambassador Yeren had commitments from 14 species. It was not enough to match the Council's 800 ships, but it was enough to matter. As she returned to the Defiance, Nari walked beside her. "You know this might not work," the intelligence officer said quietly. "We could all be destroyed together instead of separately." Yeren nodded. "Yes, but if we fight alone, we definitely lose. Together, we have a chance. A small one, but a chance. I would rather die fighting beside friends than live as a slave." She looked out the viewport at the stars. "The Council has ruled through fear for 15,000 years." The Grand Fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. 800 warships, arranged in battle formation, stretched across millions of kilometers. It was the largest military force the Council had ever assembled. Commanders who had conquered worlds stood on their bridges, confident that this would be a quick and brutal victory. High Commander Velthok led the fleet from the massive dreadnought Eternal Dominion. He was the most decorated officer in Council history, responsible for the subjugation of 32 species. He had never lost a battle. "Scan the system," he ordered. "Find their pathetic fleet so we can destroy it." His tactical officer worked the controls, then stopped, ran the scan again, and again. "Commander, there is a problem." "What problem?" "We are detecting 350 enemy vessels, not 40. Velthok turned sharply. "That is impossible. Their species has only existed among the stars for a century. Where would they get?" "Sir, ship signatures are coming back. Some are definitely human. Others are Relian, Volanti, Skellig. Sir, we are detecting ships from 14 different species, all forming a defensive line near the fourth planet." The High Commander stood very still. For the first time in his career, he felt something cold in his chest. Not fear exactly, but the edge of it. "They have gathered allies," he said quietly. "Servants of the Council are standing with them. Should we retreat and report?" "Retreat?" Velthok's voice hardened. "We outnumber them more than 2 to 1. These are slaves and primitives facing the greatest fleet ever built. We will crush them and make examples of every species that dared to stand against us." He straightened to his full height. "All ships, advance. Today we end this rebellion forever." Supreme Commander Yuna stood on the bridge of the United Flagship Freedom. Around her, officers from 6 different species worked together at their stations. Humans and Relians coordinated sensor data. Volanti pilots prepared fighter squadrons. Skellig warriors manned the weapons dot. It was strange and beautiful and absolutely unprecedented. "They are moving," reported Intelligence Officer Nari. 800 ships, standard conquest formation. Same arrogance as before. Admiral Dong Yun's face appeared on the screen from his position aboard the Defiance. "Their formation has gaps. They are not used to fighting an enemy that might hurt them. We can use that." "Agreed," Yuna said. "All units, execute formation unity. Fighters, hold back until my signal." "And Jiwan?" Engineer Jiwan's voice came through from the technical ship Prometheus. "The gravity pulse is ready, Commander. Just give me a target and a time. You will know when." She turned to the communications officer. "Open a channel. All frequencies. I want everyone in the galaxy to hear this." The channel opened. "Galactic Council Grand Fleet. This is Supreme Commander Yuna of United Forces. You come to our home with weapons ready, expecting easy victory. You come believing that fear will make us kneel." She paused, And when she spoke again, her voice rang with conviction. "You are wrong. Behind me stand not just humans, but Relians and Volanti and Skellig and a dozen other species you thought were broken. We are not broken. We have been waiting. And today, we end your age of domination." The transmission was received across the galaxy. On slave worlds and council planets, on neutral stations and hidden bases, beings watched and listened. Some wept, some cheered. All understood that nothing would ever be the same. High Commander Velthek laughed when he heard the message. "Brave words. Let us see how brave they are when their ships are burning." He pointed at the tactical display. "All weapons, target the center of their formation. First strike, maximum power. Shatter them." 800 ships fired as one. The Allied fleet scattered in a patter that looked like chaos but was carefully planned. Ships that seemed to flee were actually drawing fire away from others. Defensive shields overlapped, sharing energy. Vessels that were targeted dodged, while their neighbors struck at the attackers. It was a dance of survival and defiance. Practiced countless times in simulation, but now performed with real lives at stake. The first wave of Council fire tore through the Allied lines. 30 ships were destroyed in seconds. But the response came immediately. Human missiles, Volanti energy lances, Skellig kinetic cannons all converged on Council vessels with coordinated precision. The first Council dreadnought exploded. "Damage report," Velthek demanded. "We have lost 12 ships, Commander. Their targeting is extremely efficient. They are hitting our weak points with remarkable accuracy." "Weak points? Our ships have no weak points." "Apparently they do now, sir." Pilot Yunji led the combined fighter force, 300 craft from 8 species, in a wide arc around the battle. They had held back, waiting for the right moment. Now that moment arrived. "All wings. This is Eagle Leader. Attack Vector 7. Hit their support ships first. Make them blind and hungry." The fighters swept down on the Council fleet from an unexpected angle. They targeted sensor platforms, supply ships, and communication relays. Without these support vessels, the massive warships would be crippled. The Council scrambled to respond. Fighters launched from their carriers, but they were used to hunting helpless transports, not fighting skilled pilots. Yunji's squadrons tore through them with deadly efficiency. "Remember training," she called out as her fighter spun between 2 enemy craft, destroying both with a single pass. "They expect you to be afraid. Disappoint them." Back at the center of the battle, Supreme Commander Yuna watched the tactical display with focused intensity. The Council fleet was taking losses, but so were the Allies. Ships were dying on both sides. The math was slowly turning against them. "It is time," she said. "G1, target their core formation. Everything within 5 kilometers of their flagship." "Understood." Gravity pulse charging. All Allied ships, clear the target zone now. The Allied fleet pulled back, creating a gap in the lines. The Council saw this as weakness and surged forward, pressing what they thought was an advantage. They flew directly into the trap. "Pulse ready," G1 announced. "Fire." The gravity pulse was invisible. It made no sound, produced no flash, but its effects were devastating. Every Council ship within the target zone saw their shields collapse simultaneously. For 30 seconds, they were defenseless. Admiral Dong Yun's voice rang across the fleet. "All ships, fire everything." 200 Allied vessels unleashed their full arsenals at once. The unshielded Council ships had no protection. Explosions bloomed across the battlefield. In 30 seconds, 100 Council vessels were destroyed or disabled. High Commander Velthek watched in horror as his fleet died around him. The Eternal Dominion shook as nearby ships exploded. Debris hammered against his hull. What was that weapon? he demanded. Unknown, Commander. Our shields just collapsed. Get them back up. All ships, defensive formation. But the damage was done. The Council fleet was in chaos. Ships that had never retreated now fled in panic. Commanders who had conquered worlds called for help that was not coming. And still, the Allied fleet pressed forward. Ambassador Yaren had insisted on being present for the battle. Now she stood on the bridge of a Relian cruiser, watching the Council fleet crumble. Beside her, Telos wept openly. 2,000 years, the Relian elder whispered. 2,000 years of slavery. And now, in one day. It is not over yet, Yaren said gently. But we are winning. We are actually winning. She turned to the communications officer. Broadcast to the Council fleet. Offer surrender terms. Any ship that stands down will not be destroyed. The message went out. For long minutes, nothing happened. Then, one by one, Council ships began powering down their weapons. First a few, then dozens, then hundreds. They had believed themselves invincible. Now they believed themselves defeated. High Commander Velthax stood alone on his damaged bridge. Most of his officers were dead or had abandoned their posts. The Eternal Dominion drifted, engines failing, shields gone. Supreme Commander Yuna appeared on his screen. It is over, she said. You have lost. Order your remaining ships to surrender, and no more lives need be lost today. Velthax stared at her. A human, a primitive, a species that should have been nothing. How? He asked. How did you do this? Yuna considered the question. You thought fear was strength. You thought submission was natural. You thought you were gods, and we were insects. She shook her head. We are not insects. We are people, just like every species you have enslaved. And people, when pushed far enough, will always fight back. The High Commander was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he gave the order to surrender. The Battle of Sol was over. The Galactic Council was broken. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy transformed. Slave worlds declared independence. Council member species fractured, some seeking peace, while others fled to the outer reaches of explored space. The systems that had been ruled by fear began to govern themselves, but humanity did not seek to replace the Council's dominion with their own. Instead, Ambassador Yaren proposed something new, the Galactic Commonwealth, a union of equals where every species, regardless of how long they had traveled the stars, had a voice. We did not fight to become the new masters, she told the First Commonwealth Assembly. We fought because no one should be a master and no one should be a slave. Let this be the foundation of everything we build together. The assembly represented 47 species,